So I have got myself a little, almost a 3-pound, it's a very small rump roast, and I am going to cook it in the crock pot, and then I am going to make my husband's favorite, which is, well, let me think of what it is. It'll come to me any minute. It's going to be roast beef sandwiches on hoagies with a killer gravy that I'll make, and I'll show you that after I get the roast going in the crock pot to where it's finished. I like the crock pot. Saves me a little bit of energy. I do not want to cook this in the oven. So all I'm doing is wiping it down with salt, pepper, and some garlic powder. Then I'm going to flour it and brown it off in a skillet. And then I will have some of my home canned beef stock getting hot in my crock pot. And I'll show you as it goes along. So into my Corningware Electrics, which I refer to as crock pot, I am going to start out with a quart of chicken broth, and I'm going to chunky monkey 2 onions, get that hot. So I'm waiting for my oil to get warm so I can brown off my little baby rump roast. I'm going to turn it on all of the sides to get it as brown on the outside as I can. Then I can scrape up those meat bits off the bottom, and they will go in my crock pot as well. Excuse my racket. So it's browned off on all sides. Now I'm just going to take it to my crock pot. Put her in there, and now I work on getting my bits off the bottom that I will add to my crock pot. So I got my bits and bobs off of the bottom. Now I'm just going to set some onions around this in my crock pot, and got one for the floor. I will drop some of my home canned carrots in here. And then I will do this on high for about the first 45 minutes to an hour. Then I'll put it on low, and of course I'll have the lid on it. And I'll show you as we go along as it starts to get beautiful. And I will add 1 more pint of beef broth. I don't think there's enough liquid in here. It's a little shallow, so I'll go ahead and put some more. But one of the joys of home canning, not too much salt in it. It's my own very rich beef broth or stock, and just so I've had a quart and now a pint. This is a large crock pot. So I have 2 of my onions in here, about 3/4 of a pint of some carrots I grew 2 years ago that I had canned, and another pint of beef broth. So now we'll put on the lid and let this sucker cook at high for about 1 hour, then I'll send it back to low. So I've got my roast out, and my husband will carve it up. Seems very, very tender. I've put my potatoes in here, and I've turned my crock pot off. So now I'm going to pull out the vegetables, and then I'll get my kicking gravy going. Now I'm going to bring this to a full boil, and I'm going to let this boil quite a while before I use my flour and water. Of course, I'm going to taste it for salt and pepper. I think it'll be fine. It had onions, carrots, and potatoes in there, but I'll still give it a try. But I do make a very thick, rich gravy. If you had to use store-bought beef broth, and you don't think your gravy is brown enough, you can use the old-timey, very easy to find. It's Kitchen Bouquet browning. It says it's a seasoning sauce. It'll simply make your gravy darker if you'd like to give it a richer color. But because I made my own beef stock, very rich and brown in color. But I'm going to bring this to a full boil. This is on my super burner, and I need to get this at a roiling boil. And then I'm going to use a whisk and a spoon and beat it up. Now this is the kind of boil that I'm talking about, a big boil. And then I'm going to use my old-timey gravy, not gravy, it's a flour and water shaker. And that's how much flour. Don't use self-rising flour to become very clunky. And you don't want to add your flour and water until you have this kind of boil. If not, you're going to end up with flour chunks. So I pretty much just scrape the sides. I want to make sure I don't burn it if it were possible. So I use my whisk and I just keep this going. To me, I'm going to burn off a lot of this grease. I don't know. But this is how I was raised to do it. And this is how I do it. But I just make sure on the side of this that I don't have anything sticking, in case anything could. I don't know. It's just what I do. Just a mouse who makes some wicked slap somebody silly gravy. I did taste it, and it didn't need anything. It didn't need salt, pepper, nothing. So I'm going to let it boil away here. Just make sure it doesn't burn. I don't think it's possible with all that liquid. But I do keep it moving around. And I'll show you when I come to add the flour and water to thicken her up. So it's been boiling away for probably 15 minutes. Nothing stuck anywhere. So now I'm going to add my flour and water mixture that I've shaken well. Do not put warm water in these, or when you shake it, you will have the biggest mess you have ever seen. Just use regular cold water. So now I begin to dribble it in, and I'm going to whisk the entire time. Do not want chunks of flour in here. And let's say you messed this up, and you put too much flour and water, and you diluted your color. Go ahead and use your Kitchen Bouquet. I don't think it adds any flavor. I just think it adds color. So I'm going to continue to whisk here. I don't have any chunks of anything. I'm not going to begin to add more flour until this comes back to that full roiling boil that you saw. Not thick. We're almost back. There we are. Now we're back to that full boil. And this super burner is hot. Still has rich color. Keep it moving. Now at this point, you're not going to walk away from this and just let it boil away, or it will stick. And you will have a hot mess, which nobody wants none of that. That is looking nice. Let's check. Getting much thicker. Tomorrow, I make roast beef sandwiches on some hoagie bread that I use this gravy on, similar to a po' boy like I grew up on in New Orleans. And so we use the gravy. I put some mayonnaise on, but mostly gravy. Then I get some roast beef slices going in this gravy and hot. I lay them on there. I put gravy on one side of that bread, and then I use lettuce and tomato. And it will run down your arm, and it is definitely worth it. It is worth the mess. At this point, I can turn my burner down. I've got a simmer burner. I'm going to put it on low. And this will thicken up very quickly to where it's the consistency that we like for gravy. Gravy ought to be thick, in my opinion. I do this exact same thing when I cook a turkey and make gravy from that. So it doesn't matter what you're making your gravy from. This is how I do it. There's a very easy way to make gravy. When I was first learning how to cook, I thought I would never learn how to make a thick gravy. But I was never trying to start with drippings of something, or in this case, what I had in the crock pot. And then, so I would be doing either butter and oil, or trying to make a roux, which takes a long time to learn how to make a roux. I can now make a dark brown roux and not have a burned roux. But very easy to do. Just use what the liquid was in your crock pot. Just don't submerge your, whether you had pork in there or whether you had a roast beef, doesn't matter what kind of meat you had in there, just don't submerge it in so much broth that you would have an issue. So I'm going to let this simmer away, and every once in a while whisk it, but it is on very, very low heat, but it's starting to get a really nice thickness to it, and just keep checking it with your spoon. Because we eat rice and gravy with peas on it. So here is a plate of happy. It's rice, gravy, petit pois peas on top, a huge piece of roast beef with thick gravy, and then the vegetables, the onions, potatoes, and carrots. And this is gonna be good. Mouse toes out.